Welcome back, everyone, to a brand new explainer. Today, we're skipping the daily headlines and digging straight into the actual underlying mechanics of the conflict in West Asia. And, when you really look at the board, it's an incredibly complex chess match. We're talking about a massive, deeply interconnected web of macroeconomics, hyper-calculated drone strikes, billion-dollar naval deployments, and, of course, high-stakes global diplomacy. As always, we're going to keep things completely impartial and just break down the hard data and the strategic realities on the ground. Our goal here? Pure understanding. We want to see exactly how the board is set, how the pieces are moving, and what it all actually means for the rest of us.
Okay, let's dive into this with a question that honestly sounds a little bit like science fiction. What exactly is an invisible nuclear bomb? When we think about global conflicts, our minds naturally go straight to traditional, physically destructive weapons, right? But the absolute most dangerous weapon in this entire conflict isn't a physical explosive at all. There's no mushroom cloud, it doesn't level cities. Instead, it is purely geographical. We're talking about a choke point so incredibly vital that just threatening it has the exact same devastating global impact as dropping the ultimate weapon.
To see how this invisible weapon actually works, here's our quick roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the invisible nuclear bomb. Second, the math of asymmetric warfare. Third, the anatomy of naval strike groups. And finally, we'll zoom out to look at India's strategic autonomy.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the invisible nuclear bomb.
We are talking about one highly specific, absolutely critical waterway on the global map, the Strait of Hormuz. And the reason military strategists view this strait as a weapon of mass economic destruction comes down to just one staggering number: 20%. 20% of the entire world's crude oil flows directly through this incredibly narrow strait. If this waterway were to be completely shut down, well, it would basically be the equivalent of detonating a bomb inside the global economy. We aren't just talking about slightly higher gas prices at the pump. It would trigger instant global inflation and cause literally trillions of dollars in economic damage. Trillions, with a T. You don't even need to fire a single missile to cause worldwide panic if you have the leverage to simply lock this door. This geographical reality, that is the ultimate deterrent.
So that's the macro picture. Let's move to Section 2, the math of asymmetric warfare. If the Strait of Hormuz is the macro-level threat, what is actually happening tactically in the skies right now? Well, we're witnessing an absolute masterclass in financial attrition, and this brilliantly illustrates the completely absurd financial disparities of modern combat. On one side, you have a Shahed suicide drone utilized by Iranian forces, which cost, give or take, $30,000 to $40,000 to produce. Against it, you have a highly advanced US or Israeli interceptor missile that costs roughly $3 to $4 million a pop. But wait, here's where the math gets truly mind-bending. To guarantee you actually stop that incoming $35,000 drone, military protocols often require firing 2 interceptors. So suddenly, you're spending up to $7 or $8 million just to shoot down a piece of tech that costs about the same as a mid-sized sedan. I mean, that is 100 to 1 cost disparity. It's wild. And this brings us right to the macro budgetary impact. The United States operates with a massive annual defense budget of over $800 billion. It's practically approaching $1 trillion. Iran, on the other hand, operates on a tiny fraction of that, with an estimated military budget of just $25 to $30 billion. Yet, by utilizing these cheap, swarming drone tactics, a much smaller military budget can bleed a massive superpower's budget dry at a terrifyingly fast rate. To put that into perspective, in just the first 100 hours of active, intense engagements, the US and Israel had to spend an estimated $7 to $8 billion just to intercept incoming projectiles. The goal here isn't to conventionally overpower the enemy. Actually, scratch that, it's simpler than that. The goal is to completely bankrupt their defense grid.
So how exactly does a superpower strike back? Section 3, Anatomy of Naval Strike Groups. How does a superpower with an $800 billion budget counter these swarming threats and project global stability? Simple. They deploy floating fortresses. Let's move to and see how this builds, literally layer by layer, starting right from the center. A modern carrier strike group is a logistical marvel. At the absolute center, you have the aircraft carrier, the Crown Jewel, and mobile base. Flanking the carrier, you've got your destroyers, which are entirely dedicated to anti-air defense. Out in the front, you have frigates acting as heavily armed escorts. And lurking deep below the surface, completely unseen, are nuclear submarines clearing out the underwater pathways. It's essentially a massive, multi-layered shield designed to ensure absolutely nothing can touch that carrier in the middle.
To really grasp the sheer scale of these assets, just look at the USS Gerald R. Ford. This behemoth is the beating heart of the American naval deployment in the region. It is a colossal 350 meters long. It carries 60 to 70 advanced fighter jets, effectively making it a sovereign floating airport. It houses a staggering 5,000 personnel. And maybe the most incredible part, it's powered entirely by an onboard nuclear reactor, meaning it doesn't ever need to stop for traditional fuel. It can theoretically just keep running indefinitely. But, as you can imagine, just maintaining this beast, keeping those radars spinning, the lights on, and 5,000 people fed, costs millions of dollars every single day. But the carrier can't survive alone, right? It needs its bodyguards. Enter the Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. These ships provide what military analysts call an air defense dome. They use immensely powerful radars to detect those cheap incoming drones and missiles from hundreds of miles away, swatting them down long before they ever get close. Meanwhile, beneath the waves, you have the Virginia-class attack submarines. Because they're also nuclear-powered, they can just remain completely submerged and undetected for months at a time. And they're packed with Tomahawk cruise missiles that can strike land targets with absolute pinpoint accuracy. This right here is the conventional might of a superpower. It is highly effective, but as we saw with the math earlier, it is incredibly expensive to operate. Now, let's zoom back out to the global stage for Section 4, India's strategic autonomy. While superpowers and regional actors are currently locked in this massively expensive military and economic tug-of-war, how does a rising global power navigate the chaos without getting burned? Well, the answer lies in a strategy called strategic autonomy. And it's really vital we nail down this definition. Strategic autonomy is not the same thing as just being neutral, and it's definitely not about sitting on the sidelines being passive or silent. It's a highly calculated, active foreign policy where a nation acts completely independently, making its decisions strictly based on its own national interests. It's basically having a mind of your own. It allows a country to maintain deep, complex, and highly profitable relationships with nations that might literally be at war with one another. Now, what's really interesting about this is how it plays out in the real world. During recent massive global crises and heavy economic sanctions, the global energy market was quite literally on the brink of absolute collapse. The United States essentially requested, honestly, practically begged India to continue purchasing Russian oil. Why? Because if that massive amount of oil was taken entirely off the global market, the resulting supply shock would have completely destroyed global markets. India's strategic autonomy gave it the flexibility to step right in, buy that oil, process it, and ultimately play a massive role in stabilizing the global energy market for everybody else. So, the crucial point is perfectly captured by this quote from leadership expert Simon Sinek, who was observing India's rising geopolitical position. He stated, "We are the world's friend, because if everybody comes together, everybody grows." By refusing to just blindly take a hard ideological side and instead actively balancing its relationships, whether that's cooperating with the US on defense, maintaining ties with Iran to access crucial infrastructure like the Chabahar Port, or trading with Russia, India leverages its strategic autonomy to position itself as a global anchor, a mediator, and truly, the world's friend. It is an absolute masterclass in modern diplomacy. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought to chew on. We've just looked at the trillion-dollar economic threats of geographic choke points, the massive, almost comical cost disparity of drone warfare, the sheer awe-inspiring scale of conventional naval fleets, and the highly nuanced diplomacy of rising powers. So, the big question is this. In an era where a $35,000 drone can tie up a billion-dollar warship, and where the most powerful weapon on Earth is just an invisible geographic choke point on a map, is conventional superpower might becoming obsolete? Is the future of warfare going to be won by whoever can simply outlast the other financially? Think about that for a bit. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. I hope this explainer helped you see the global board just a little more clearly. Keep learning, stay curious, and I'll catch you next time.